God's up to something. I mean, He's really up to something. But we're not going to find out what He's up to until we get off of what we're down on. Let's see if I can say that again. God's really up to something. He really is. But we're not going to find out what He's up to until we get off of what we're down on. So goes the saying. Well, Satan sidetracks us into dwelling on smaller problems, maybe in our computing efforts, when more importantly, God is working out His plan on a much bigger blessing for us that often is life-saving in magnitude. I call this computer ditch drinking. I'll show you why in a minute. Hi, I'm Gramps. At the moment, I'm entering these words into a computer that's a quad-core, state-of-the-art screaming machine with some of the latest computer programs. Its massive power is like an impatient racehorse waiting to be let out of the barn and do what God designed it to do best, run like the wind. But next to it is my printer. It's thirsty for black ink. The mailman could knock on my door and hand me my print cartridge shipment, but he hasn't. Part of me wants to sit and think of all the things I could be doing if I had ink to give my printer a fresh drink. Maybe you have days like this too. We complain about our situations when really there is a great deal we can do with what God has already blessed us with. Maybe we need to focus more on the good things God has already given to us that are being wasted or not used to their fullest. Maybe God is using the thirsty printer to direct me toward another blessing that He sees and I don't. Does He have a new skill or a new friend that I don't know about yet? Sometimes God answers our moaning and groaning prayers in a strange way, in a way we never thought of. Oh, one other thing. Timing. Timing always has a great deal to do with discovering more goodness from God. I mean, adjusting our timing to His schedule, is a real power trip. Now, before we look at this scriptural computing principle, I'll ask, have you ever been so thirsty that you'd drink out of a mud puddle like an animal? That'd be humiliating, wouldn't it? Well, here's where the computer ditch drinking comes in. I always like to see what the Bible has to say about my situation, even when it involves computers, especially when it has to do with computers. 2 Kings chapter 3 demonstrates this terribly important computing principle. The historical event starts in verse 9. You'll want to read every word for yourself, and probably more than once, to really get it to sink in. The Israelites had already been promised by God that He'd take care of them every day if they'd love and obey Him in return. Nevertheless, they thought God was going to let them and their animals die of thirst. They asked Elisha what to do. Through the lips of Elisha, God told the people to do a strange thing. They were to dig ditches that might have looked like graves to some. They were to fill the whole valley with ditches. Well, I'm sure some thought, we're dying of thirst. We asked God for help, and He has us start digging our graves. Does God know about our needs? Does He care about me at all? Now let me ask you, have you ever heard these questions come from your lips or from others? God promised the Israelites that without wind or rain, the ditches would be filled with water the next morning, and He did too. You know, God never lies when He promises to love and provide for us, but we have to obey. We have to dig into God's directions for us. Now here's the timing in God's provisions. Now watch. The next morning after the meat offering, when the sun was high and bright, the people all knelt down to the ditches and drank like dogs. I'm sure it was very humiliating for people that had prided themselves as God's chosen nation. But you see, God had a plan for those thirsty people, just like He has a plan for you and I with our computing. but we must be brought to our knees in prayer and drinking in His gifts. But what makes this such a fantastic event is what happened that the Israelites may never have learned about. Here goes. As the Israelites knelt and drank from the ditches, they probably didn't know that their Moabite enemy was standing on the nearby hill ready to attack. But as the army looked down on all the ditch drinking, they also saw the reflection of the red sun on the waters and thought the Israelites had already been slaughtered. Therefore they left without a sound or bloodshed. The Israelites were saved from death because they obeyed God in doing what they thought was a strange thing. And they humbled themselves and knelt at doing the right thing according to God's schedule. But more than that, the Bible says the Moabite king was so distressed at Israel and what had happened that he sacrificed his oldest son as a burnt offering on the wall. Well, the bottom line of all this is that whether we're super thirsty or in the middle of a disappointing computing efforts, whether it's digging ditches or dying as a sacrifice, God is in full control. He always has been and always will be. He simply expects us to lovingly trust in Him and dig into His Word each day to see how majestically He provided for and protected others. God designed us to be thirsty for water, but also thirsty for His leading and His loving us, even when we're not all that lovely or anxious to please Him. Jump into that 2 Kings chapter 3 again and get the whole story. Then ask God how you can apply it to your life today. Remember, others are always watching you. I repeat, remember, others are always watching you.